Is it time to sell? Well, at least for NVIDIA shareholders, the stock is down by 15% in 3 days. That's a $500 billion wipeout. Woof! And if we look here, like who's next? Because today's video is sponsored by Mr. Red. Is AVGO and Qualcomm next? Whoa, well, let's find out because this wipeout is fairly impressive. Remember, on the weekly chart, if you look back to our pattern, well, this time here, we went down by 20%, but it took 4 weeks. Here, it's like been, I don't know, 6 days, and we're already down by 15. Whoa, like what is going on here? We'll come back and look at this pattern because now we're getting some other evidence here, like on QQQ versus SPY, where this is looking like what I suspected on the weekend. Let's go here to full candles because what I mentioned was in hindsight, it might look like a head and shoulders. Well, if that's the high of the week for QQQ, like, yeah, that might be a head and shoulders. Right now, it doesn't look good. If we pop back over here to SPY, hey, this looks a little bit better. Why does it look better? Well, because we have an inside bar. So if we blow it up nice and close here, and we'll go to full candles because I know it's a little bit easier to see. What do we know? Well, we have an inside bar. So something's happening underneath the surface. And that would be exactly correct. So if all we're doing is looking at SPY, well, we've stopped going up. And we have to make sure we pay attention to other ETFs, including RSP, actually up on the day. So when I look down here, I'm like, okay, RSP green, Dow green. We got healthcare, financials, the Russell, energy, utilities, New York Stock Exchange, insurance, regional banks. We got China. We got emerging markets green. Yeah. So it looks like people are rotating. They're definitely selling NVIDIA, right? They're selling it hard. And we got lots of gaps on here. It's every 10 bucks. 116, 106, 96, 86. That's every green line. So staircase up, elevator down. How far down do we have to go? Well, if we don't hold 116, 116, I'd be looking for 106. I expect that if we come down as low as the 50 DMA, a boot, 100 bucks, that should at least get us a dead cat bounce. If it's a bull reversal, we'll bounce off of it. If it's not, we're probably going to hang out and then go down. And that's what I would expect at any area. As we go lower, you don't want to see increasing price. That is terrible. So let's go read this article here because this might be explaining who's going to be next. If we look to the heat map, it looks like other chips are under pressure. Yes, NVIDIA's its CEO, Jensen Huang, sells $95 million worth of stock. Other chip CEOs are selling. So he sold, I think it's like 90 some million. Let me just see here. I can find it really fast. I think it was 95 mil. Yeah, he sold, here we go. Sold $95 million worth of stock. Okay, there you go. That might explain part of it. And what I'd be really looking for, and we'll come back and talk about this a little bit later in the show. Now that we're in correction mode, remember on the weekend, only 1 day ago, which seems like an eternity in this market, we mentioned that on Friday, we're going to get that core PCE number. So if we go to this week, we look at on Friday, we get core PCE. Hey, this looks like a good number to me. 2.8 to 2.6, 0.2 to 0.1. Man, I think that's a buy. And that's what it looks like today in the heat map. Let's go group. And then we look here. Okay, well, like everything else is looking a lot better, right? It's mostly green, a little bit of gray, which means flat. Perfect. Sell some NVIDIA, buy everything else. Nice. I also watched a video about the reason why Jensen Huang wears his leather jacket. Found that quite interesting. Drop a comment if you want to know the reason why. So looking at the heat map on the day, let's remember what happened in the last 3 months as we look to rebalance. Yes, everyone's talking about the slide today, but look, it's still up by 23% in the last 90 days. Looking over here to Apple, hey, 22. So Google at 20. People don't look like they've missed the boat as much with where this sits now. If it holds into the end of the month, you don't look like such a big loser if you didn't buy any NVIDIA at all. And the other guys were like, hey, happy to sell to you, right? We're crushing it. Let's look where we've been like in the last 6 months, 140% in the last year, 170%. They're like, cool, you need to own it? Sure, I'll sell to you, but for a nice premium, sir. And that's exactly what they're doing. All right. And then not to be outdone by Ed Yardini, we talked about today, who said 8,000 by the end of the decade. Well, Tom Lee saying 15,000. That seems about correct. 15,000 by the end of this decade. Well, 170% sounds an awful like my 1995 bull thesis where I said 220% from the breakout. So we'll go through that in a minute as well. But first, if you guys don't mind, please and thank you considering to smash a thumbs up or subscribing to the channel. I would greatly, greatly appreciate that. Thank you ahead of time. So the other thing I noticed at a high level is just that crypto is really selling off here. So this one's selling off hard. And what's interesting is that it looks like rotation is happening here too. Bitcoin and Ether down. Remember, we have the launch of that Ether ETF sometime this summer. People seem to be selling it anyway. Gold is catching a bit though. So that appears like rotation to me. Buy some copper, buy some coal, some gold, and then some oil, and sell your Bitcoins. That's what it looks like. If we look to MEGs, let me just see if there's any more news to go through. Then we'll look at some charts here. So we mentioned that just at a very high level here, we'll come back and look at these charts, but the weekly charts are what really matter. Yes, I understand that hollow candles might be a little bit harder to read than just looking at green and red. Remember, the extra data point is that it's either that we're closing higher or lower. If we have a hollow candle, it means that the expansion's continuing. We talked about this until last week and before. Oops, let's bring back my indicators. I want to get rid of my drawings. There we go. The same pattern here. Failed weekly breakout, close with a full candle. Fail weekly breakout, close out with a red candle. And then we talked about that. The only thing we needed to see to confirm the crash was happening was close below the previous weekly low. Well, we're below it. There's no gap on the weekly chart, I believe. 124.3, 124.4. Nope. So looks just like this. But remember, if now we think about how far could we go? Well, like I said, corrections already happened. We're down by 15. -5 is a dip. -10 is a correction. -20 is a bear market. So we're like halfway between a correction and a bear market. And it's been 6 days. Like, oh my God. In 3 days, we're down by 15%. So this last move right here lasted for 4 weeks and it went down by 15%. Okay, well, so far we're down by 6 days and we're down by 15%. So how about we just get it over with, right? We're down by another $1 in after hours here. We'll see if we can decline to roughly 1%. Hey, if we get it out of the way, what could happen by Friday? Man, it could be a big old buy. Why? I think that the people who were forced to own because of window dressing we talked about before, well, they're getting crushed right now, right? You had to buy, you had to chase it. Yeah, even Jensen Huang selling to you. You're like, yes, I was able to purchase the CEO shares. I feel so special. Hope you do. So we'll see what happens here. Jensen's jacket. We talked about the year-to-date returns. This just looks like good old rotation to me. This is a huge number too. So we'll talk about 1995 tomorrow. But let's pretend we wake up on Friday morning, whether we're down from here further or higher, and I told you these were the numbers. Would you say, oh, that looks like progress? Or would you say, whatever? Well, let's have a look. Why? Because this is what I'm thinking about. We've been stuck at 2.8 forever, right? Need to see the totality of the data. Whoa. Well, 2.9, 2.8, we're stalling out here for 5 months. We've had an improvement of 0.1. And I talked about how when we looked at the month over month and we just look at 12 months, we're going to be removing some of these fat numbers and adding some nice little weak ones. So on a year over year, we're going from 2.8 to 2.6. I would call that progress. I would call that evidence for the Fed to cut, maybe even 2 times this year. So what do you want to do? And wait for this thing to flush out. Wait for the -20. That would be here at, let's actually find the number. Where would -20 be? -20 is at roughly 112. So 112, 106, somewhere in there, right? That's between 106 and 116. Anyway, so if we now go over to SPY, because of how big that NVIDIA is now, remember on Friday, we also had a dividend that was part of the 0.3% decline for Friday. So we're not even really doing all that bad. We have a bearish engulfing candle today. I wasn't really paying attention to SPY. One of my other holdings was absolutely on fire, right? Pun intended. So bearish engulfing candle closing below the low. That's no good. That's not good. So on the daily chart, we've stopped going up and we know the declines. We go down to here, right? That's roughly that. The dip would be at roughly 5. I don't think we're going to get down that far quite yet. I do still think we're going to go higher. Number one thing for me would be watching that 541.62 low from last week because we are already below the high we talked about for the failed breakout. That's at 544.12. And then look over here at QQQ, like I mentioned, where we're going to be on Friday. Man, let's pretend this happens too. So if we end up getting a bullish candle, again, let's just pretend that this is the open. Let's pretend that this is at or near the low. It's going to look like another hammer, right? Party time. Whoop. So if we close red, it means we'd not have a real body at all. We'd have a massive wick. If we're going to go higher, then that's what we would see here. And it would invalidate that potential for the head and shoulders. So what am I saying here? Let's watch and see what happens between now and Friday, because it's not that there's no data. It's just light. A number on Friday is the number, especially this one here now that I see it. I'm like, man, time to buy. There's a wall of money waiting to get in, like Goldman Sachs has said, and we'll review tomorrow. Well, let's get ready for it. With that said, maybe you want to smash a thumbs up on the left or consider subscribing on the right. If not, come hang out with me at 9:15 a.m. tomorrow. Thanks so much.